Speaking of our boy Greg, with 7 Gs now, if I calculated it correctly, he's back. He's back. Let's hear it. Let's hear thoughts. The news comes out. What do you think?
Boo. God,
Yeah,
it's just lazy. It just feels so lazy. Like you couldn't you couldn't look into it a little bit more to try to look at anybody else. I mean, two interim coaches have come in and have shown success with this team. Clearly, it's not like Greg was some mastermind creating success for this team. Pretty much, I think BJ and Hudson have proven that almost any coach can just step in at this point and have successful results with this team. They're just talented enough. So I don't understand why they couldn't look into something a bit more so that we can try and take that next step to compete with the Netherlands, the Germanys, the Spains. But now I just feel like we went right back to where we were before. And then we're just going right back to still being like a half a step behind those teams. And I can't remember. I don't know if this was a joke or if it was serious. And I can't remember if Adam was the one that said it, where they were comparing numbers to what Greg was had accomplished in the national team. It's like, well, of course, Greg matches Greg's numbers the best because Greg is Greg.
yeah. All right, let's just get this over with. Greg coming back is the last thing anybody wanted to see.
Anybody, MLS
Anybody.
or Eurosnob.
Correct. Nobody is sitting here like, yeah. And I'm going to go back to a comment you made 3 years ago, I think. He's got good MLS experience and is coaching players who are out of his level in terms of coaching. I have a C license in coaching. I cannot go into the national team and make them better because they know more than me. That barrier is a real thing. I can't go to a college Division 1 level and coach them to be better because they know more than me right now. That barrier, I do exist. I do believe exists, and I think it's a real big part of what needed to be a part of it. Now, I will put Greg on the defensive, or I will be on the Greg defensive here. Excuse me. By far the most winningest head coach in our history. 71.67% win percentage over Bruce's 66.55. Asserted dominance over El Tree for the first time ever. Did the Gold Cup Nations League double, Gold Cup with a much more rotated squad than usual. Qualified and got out of the World Cup group in 22, which we didn't even qualify for in 2018. Used the youth players and got them to the level that they needed to be at the national team. And lastly, and most importantly, nearly every single person in that locker room loves it. Every person comes out and talks about how that locker room atmosphere is the best they've ever been in. They all fight for each other, and you can look at it in the Canada game, right? I had a buddy texting me who doesn't watch soccer in the slightest. He'll turn on the men's national team games every once in a while. And he goes, I can't believe we're going to lose to Canada. This is 12 minutes left in extra time. I go, bro, this isn't over yet. Just wait. He goes, no, man, this game's over. Come back and win the game. That's not a BJ Callahan going, rah, rah, here we go, guys. That stems from what Greg did. Do I think he's the right guy? No. Probably not. I don't really know, but I don't feel like it doesn't fill me. But here's the other thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about. Who are the realistic options to take that spot that really wanted to for the money that they were going to pay? Because I know they say like, oh, money's no option. Money was an option. We're the American Soccer Federation. Money's always an option. Apparently, Marsh didn't want it. I didn't hear anybody from Europe or South America come out and say I wanted it. The only person who said was like, oh, I'm interested was Patrick Vieira. Do we really want Patrick Vieira, who doesn't have to my knowledge, doesn't have national team coaching experience, which is a massive change from club team. Two completely different layouts there. Are we going to dip back into the MLS pool again? Are we going to go Sharundalo? Are we going to piss everybody off because we didn't go hire, Jose Mourinho's 3-year-old son? Like, I don't know who the realistic options were. Now, Was the process sketchy? As you mentioned, yeah, it was. There's something that I didn't love. But I'd love to know who was in the running and who actually, like, if they offered, would have taken it. So I feel like a lot of them like were free agents and were definitely available. But the second US approached them, they were like, nah, I'm good.
I feel like you could find somebody else. Like I just don't think going back to Gregg is solving any of our problems. I mean, we saw what we were capable of with him. Clearly, there's still a level above that. It could maybe it's an MLS coach that gets in there. I'm not sure. I have my doubts, but I feel like they could find somebody else. Try somebody else. I would have taken Patrick Vieira over going again with Gregg.
See, I'm not.
It would have at least been a coach that has experience with a European style of play where all our players are basically playing right now.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I think that's a fair point, and you've changed me a little bit there. Like I said, once I see the list, I think I'm a little bit more about it. But without the list, I don't know who I can compare it to and be like, oh man, I if we come out and it's Joachim Low, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, and they all said no, we're gonna pass on them to go to Gregg. Get them.
Yeah,
USMNT Twitter, go. Unleash the hounds, go get them. But if it's Patrick Vieira, a half committed Jesse Marsh, Chris Armas, and my brother, I'm taking Gregg. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing, he didn't do anything in the game on paper that should tell us no. Like he's gotten the guys to play for him. They understand his relatively crazy system for now. I almost feel like it's one of those things where like, if we have everybody healthy, just put them on the field and tell them to go play. You know, like I feel like it just don't mess it up. That's probably maybe that's the message to him. Hey, Gregg, we're gonna give it back to you. Don't mess it up. Just let them do their thing. You don't even need to say anything. Just go pick the starting 11. Actually, no, don't even pick the starting 11. Just go to Twitter. Let Twitter tell you who to pick, and then just go play.
just
Right?
throw
Like,
bounce passes.
yeah, literally. You keep the ball going as quickly as you can. So here's the last question for our boy Greggy. Is this signing indicative that he's got the reins for the 26 World Cup?
I hope not. I really hope not. That whoever's in charge for 2026 really needs to be the right man in charge. And I just don't think that it's Gregg. I know you mentioned that like he's statistically the most successful and he gets the guys to play for him, but I think a lot of that is without any context. I think Gregg has easily had the most talented US pool in history. I think bar none. Um, I think he has a weaker CONCACAF than what other coaches have gone up against. And I would say I agree that it's great that the guys, you know, a lot of the guys love to play for him. I'm sure there's not everybody loves to play for him. I mean, I'm sure Pepe doesn't like to play for him. I feel like I've heard things about Scally not loving Gregg. But you know, the main guys seem to love him. So that's something, I guess. There does seem to be good camaraderie with the team, which I think, you know, credit to Gregg if he built that. But I think that's an excellent opportunity to go to someone else and capitalize on that camaraderie and team chemistry. The more I look at it, the more I actually like Patrick Vieira as the manager because, like I mentioned before, he's got the European experience. He managed at Crystal Palace, he managed at Nice. But he also has the MLS experience too. If he has MLS guys in there, he managed at NYCFC and he was fantastic there. So I think he would have been a great choice. I think I almost feel like going with Gregg without the intention of him being in charge for 2026 just seems stupid. Because what are you going to do? Just bring him in to do a couple of tournaments before then and then rotate and have guys adjust to a whole new system before then? versus you could have someone now and like get 4 years under this new system, get guys familiar playing with each other, go play Copa America with the new coach. But instead, we're risking it now playing Copa America with Gregg, and then Gregg gets sacked, and now we have to start all over again with a new system.
Yeah. So this is my sticking point with this hire. If he goes into Copa America and just lays an egg, poops the bed, pees his pants, I mean, however you want to put it, he's got to go. We cannot go into a World Cup on our home soil with 0 games in qualifying and only a bunch of friendlies as a side that's out of form. You can bring BJ back. You can bring Chris Armas in. Hell, call me. But if he fails at Copa America, he's got to go. And it doesn't matter. I mean, pay Jesse Marsh an entire city if you need to. Call Kansas City Marsh City next year. I don't care. But you cannot let him lay in it. Like, that needs to be a stipulation in the contract where if you don't get to the semifinal, I mean, I'm making this up, right? If you don't get to the semifinals of Copa America, you're gone. And that's just that. Like, you have to have some sort of metric for him. You can't just be like, oh yeah, we're just gonna roll the dice and see what happens. This is the biggest moment in soccer history outside of '94 for United States. We need to hit it out of the park.
I'm worried that he's gonna hit like a gray area in terms of Copa America performance, and they're not gonna pull the trigger on it. He's gonna make it to like the quarterfinals or something where it's like, like could he have done better? I don't know. Let's just hang on to him for now. And then we're gonna be stuck with him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's my worry. That's my biggest worry about him is less about what he does with his team and more that will give him too much of a leash.
Yeah, I mean it's very frustrating watching his tactics and watching a team that the team just doesn't score goals when he's in charge. And
And
I mean,
that's yeah.
and Anthony Hudson came in and BJ Callahan came in, and it felt like the goals just started flowing again. And I don't know if it was just like maybe they, to your point, just were like hands off and were like, all right, you're way more talented than your opponent. Like, just go play, be talented, and score goals. But for whatever reason, when Gregg was in charge, we just could not score goals. We were allergic to goals. We were just awful at scoring. And I'm very worried about going right back to that.
No, 100%.